8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Liam Hendricks, and you're watching Crosstown Crosstalk on the Barroom Network.
Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Every summer in Chicago, the sunshine spotlights the city's spectacular skyline. Its luxurious lakeshore, marvelous monuments, and the over 200 neighborhoods in the city. And it also brings to light two of the greatest sports franchises in the world. On the north side, it's the Cubs. On the south side, it's the White Sox. This is Crosstown Crosstalk.
Hello and welcome to another very exciting episode of Crosstown Crosstalk, presented by the Barroom Network. My name is Vinnie Parise, and every single time I've been watching that intro, just sitting here waiting for the show to start for like a year and a half now, over that, longer than that. Wow. I know we're over 2 years now. And I love it every single time. So credit to the great Aldo Gandia for the great intro. Never really talked about it too much on this show. I think White Sox Dave complimented it one time when we went live with him a couple of years ago. But other than that, I think that intro doesn't get the praise that it deserves. Credit to Aldo Gandia. What a legend. Guys, huge news since the last time I was on the airwaves of the Barroom Network on a baseball show. I didn't get too much into it yesterday on Bar Down Talking Hockey, which you should go back and listen to right now. That show became kind of expired an hour after it ended because Austin Matthews signed a huge contract, but we'll get into that next week. Since the last time I was on to talk baseball, Monday night, South Burbs Hitman, we had no clue that anything big was coming by the end of the week. Of course, I'm talking about, if you live under a rock, the firing of Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams. The Chicago White Sox made that move on Wednesday night, and no, that would be Tuesday night, and just insane moves. I mean, all season long, I'm thinking like, okay, the White Sox are really going to run it back next year after this abysmal season that they've had. Basically from the middle of last season forward, the middle of 2 years ago, really, forward, they've just started to slowly but surely decline. They were slightly above average in post All-Star of 2021 and then got shelled in the playoffs by the Houston Astros. And then in 2022, they were just average all season long. And they ended up with quite literally the most average record you can have in Major League Baseball of 81-81. And there were some changes made in the offseason. Tony La Russa resigned, due to health reasons, and they made some changes to the coaching staff, and there were some player changes. Jose Abreu moved on to the Houston Astros, and we saw Carlos Rodon leave the year prior. Lots of changes with the Chicago White Sox from that amazing 2021 season for the most part until the playoffs rolled around. And then here we are in 2023, and they are one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball. And I'm sitting here like, we're hearing rumors about how Rick Hahn and Williams, they're going to be back next year. And not only are they going to be back, they think they're going to contend. And I'm like, how ignorant do you have to be to actually think that the White Sox are going to contend next year? I mean, look at this roster. And what about them do you think is going to contend next year? First of all, Mike Clevenger has probably been the best pitcher on the staff. And that's a problem because he's a shitbag human being, and he's certainly not going to be back next year. I'd be stunned if he's back next year. So that leaves you with Dylan Cease and Michael Kopech as guys who you're like certain that are going to be in the rotation next year. And Dylan Cease, he's declined this year. Like I'm not even going to say he's been like a drop off from last year. It's a straight up decline. And it makes you wonder, like, okay, we see Lance Lynn. He's gone on to the Los Angeles Dodgers, a team notorious for getting the most out of their players and making them better. And he's been sick. We've seen that happen to multiple other pitchers. Really, the only person who's a position player or pitcher who's left town since the trade deadline that got worse was Giolito. and he went to the one team I'd rather be a fan of less than the White Sox, and that's the Angels. We will get to them at the end of the show. But I mean, for the most part, whoever has left the White Sox, I mean, Jake Berger's been magnificent in Miami. He's been even better than the elite hitter, offensive powerhouse that he was in Chicago. He's been even better with the Marlins. And it just goes to show that there's significant issues with this White Sox team, and they made a big change. Now, the problem is we're all excited about this big change. Nobody wanted to see Rick Hahn or Kenny Williams stick around for the White Sox much longer. Basically, since 2012, Rick Hahn has been irrelevant. He's been hiding for, 11 years, basically, since then. And Rick Hahn has won 2 playoff games in 3 playoff appearances. No. Yeah, 2 playoff games and 2 playoff appearances. 1 playoff win per playoff year that they had, and that's not good enough. They're the only team in the 2010s in Major League Baseball, besides them and the Seattle Mariners, are the only 2 that didn't make the playoffs at all in the entire decade of the 2010s. And Rick Hahn was the GM for most of it. Kenny Williams had a lot of say, we're learning, for most of it. It's just been a disgusting disgrace, and we're happy they're gone. The problem is, like I said, the rumors about who they're going to hire in their place. That's an issue. There is no reason that Chris Getz should be the general manager of the Chicago White Sox. None whatsoever. He's barely qualified. I'll go as far to say he's not qualified to have the job that he currently has, which is the assistant to the general manager and leader of player development. And I just am in no way, shape, or form somebody that believes that Getz should be the new GM of the White Sox. It would basically be hiring a worse version of Rick Hahn, in my opinion. And, maybe Rick Hahn will go somewhere else and prove that he really was handcuffed by the Chicago White Sox organization, because Jerry Reinsdorf was a shitty owner and Kenny Williams meddled where, he shouldn't be. And there were just too many cooks in the kitchen. If Rick Hahn goes to another team where the owner is not a doofus and allows him to do what he's going to do, maybe we'll see trades like the Chris Sale trade, like the Adam Eaton trade, and those will actually work out because the player development schemes will be better, and they'll be allowed to spend money to supplement these players once they reach to the big leagues. Listen, guys, there's a reason Moncada, Jimenez, Robert, all these guys, when they hit the major leagues, Giolito, Cease, when they got there, they were great. There's no doubt about it. Moncada was awesome in 2019. He got MVP votes. And then here we are in 2023, and everybody thinks Moncada sucks, because he does. But is that the White Sox fault, or is that Moncada's fault? I actually think it's a little bit of both. Moncada is not a true go-get-him type of player, but also that could just be the, based on Eloy Jimenez's comments, it really does suggest that that could be just the culture of the White Sox. If the Red Sox would have hung on to Yohan Moncada, and he was the number 1 prospect, and they kept developing him, I truly believe he would be their starting second baseman right now. Because they have Devers at third. They now have Story at short, which you never know if they sign Story, cause and effect. But I do believe the White Sox have a serious internal problem, and that's not going to change unless they look outside of the organization. I think now would be a great time for me to call the bullpen. There's somebody I have been meaning, wanting, begging to talk about this with for the last couple days. My co-host on the South Burbs Hitman podcast, Joe Mandel. I'm very excited to chat him up and see what he thinks of the move.
What's up, buddy?
White Sox. What is going on, Joseph?
A lot. Busy week in sports, man.
It is a busy week in sports. The team on your head is starting to make me a little worrisome, too, with all the injuries they've had.
Yeah, such is life in Chicago.
Literally. But, Joe, we actually, outside of a couple text messages here and there, haven't been able to dissect with one another the moves that were made by the White Sox. Take me through your head now. We're about 72 hours. No, I'm not good at math. However many hours we are removed from the announcement. It was about 5 o'clock Central Time on Tuesday night. Yep. Where are you at now? Not so much immediate reaction. You could go watch the South Burbs Hitman immediate reaction with Joe Mandel and Mike North to get that. Now that you have some time to digest it, where are you at on this news?
I mean, I was happy when it happened, and I'm still happy. But, this internal hiring stuff is the stuff that's starting to scare me. It better not be Chris Getz, like you were saying before I came on. Then there's only one other name internally for a guy that was Ozzie Guillen's prediction to be the next GM, and that's Jim Thome. Again, is he qualified to be a GM at this point? I don't think so. I think he needs more time in the front office. Not saying he's not a Hall of Famer, because clearly Jim Thome is one of the greats in baseball history. You got to go outside of the organization, Vinny. I don't think there's any way you can do this without doing that to change that culture. Pedro talked about changing of culture, right? And they need to change the culture. Keenan Middleton, his comments stirred up changing culture. You don't do that by hiring somebody internally to be your next GM. Everyone's preaching the Theo train. Would be great, right? But there's only one way you're getting Theo to come out and do that. And you got to offer him an ownership stake in the team. I think that's the only way it happens.
I think that's something the White Sox should consider. I mean, he's been in Chicago before. I really wouldn't settle if I'm the White Sox. I know Jerry Reinsdorf doesn't care about, taking this team to the next level. Like, it's nothing more than a business to him. But I mean, John Morosi today reported a couple potential candidates. He mentioned Getz, who's the assistant GM and the top internal candidate. I don't think there's any denying that Getz is the top internal candidate, which is exactly why nobody internal should be considered at all. But he mentioned James Click, who is the architect of the defending World Series champion Houston Astros, and he's currently with the Toronto Blue Jays as a vice president of strategy. And then he listed Preston Mattingly, who's a Phillies executive, and he's from Indiana, suggesting that there's a chance he grew up a White Sox fan. Do any of those names intrigue you, or are you just kind of like, I really want, this person or nobody?
I'm intrigued by all of those names that are outside of the org. I think they're all quality options. I think hiring internally would be the big mistake here. Obviously, there's a long way to go. I know Jerry said they'd figure this out by the end of the season, which I think is kind of a crazy accelerated timeline for this, if I'm being honest. But I would imagine that there'd be somebody in place by the start of next season, probably before the winter meetings. But it better not be Chris Getz, because it's just more of the same. He's Han 2.0, and we don't need that.
Where do you think these reports come from? I mean, Bob Nightingale has basically lied through his teeth or is just a complete dummy. Pedro Grifal's returning next year. Tony La Russa was hired as a consultant. Chris Getz is already confirmed to be the GM. None of those things have come true so far.
Yeah, and then not only did the Tony La Russa thing not end up not being true, Ryan McGuffey retweeted it, and then he came out and said, I found out this is not true, like within a beat. So yeah, Nightingale's not had a great week. I don't know where he's getting his info from, but I mean, obviously it's not Jerry, right? Usually it would be Jerry with Nightingale, but either that or they're just putting feelers out there to get reactions on social media, which is entirely possible.
It is possible. Not that anybody cares what I think or where I find my information, but my guy did confirm Tony La Russa thing is completely false. But he did say that the what's it called? The Chris Getz thing could very well be possible, which is everybody's biggest fear. I mean, listen, there's a world where he proves everybody wrong. Everybody's got to start somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I don't get people praising the prospect development in the White Sox organization. I guess you can say, and I'm trying to be fair to everybody, Chris Getz did nothing wrong to me, right? Like, he was a mediocre White Sox player. They traded him to the Royals, and he's finished with the Blue Jays. Like, whatever. I have no issues with Chris Getz, the person. The White Sox did successfully develop, in a lot of ways, a lot of the guys that we think stink today. They just didn't keep them successful. Moncada was awesome in 2019 and 2021. Eloy hit 30 home runs as a rookie. You know how hard it is to hit 30 home runs in general?
Yeah.
He did it as a rookie, and he missed 50 games in his rookie season. Like, mm-hmm. I think it's crazy that people act like the White Sox have had no development whatsoever. I mean, Andrew Vaughn, he had a good rookie season, and he's tapered off. Gavin Sheets, good rookie season, tapered off. It's like these guys get there with the knowledge that they have come to get in their minor league, and then they get to the big league level, stay for a while, and the loserness starts to rub off on them. And
how much of
that's not
that
Chris
goes on the
Getz'
org?
fault.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And Vin, you brought up Eloy, and I gotta bring it up. The interview in the clubhouse yesterday with Eloy, and then there was a separate one with TA. Obviously, I don't have the clip. I can't play the whole clip because it's I think it's NBC Sports or whatever. Disgusting. These guys, they're asking about the change in leadership. They're asking about the change in culture. And they could sound like they could have sounded like they would have been 800 million places other than where they were. They didn't care. Eloy had no energy. TA had no energy. Just tell me about your thoughts on that, Vin, because those interviews are disgusting to me.
I'm absolutely disgusted. I'm so disappointed in Eloy Jimenez specifically. I'm not really surprised that Tim Anderson, he's never really had like I hate to say it, he's never really had like a winning attitude in baseball outside of the 2019 season when the whole change the game thing started. It did seem like he was going to grab the bull by the horn there, but then he got so popular and he blew up so much. It kind of seemed like he started to get this like, I'm the cool guy attitude, which he is a cool guy. I like Tim Anderson, but he never really struck me as the guy who's going to be the leader on this team. I thought Eloy Jimenez was going to be a voice on the White Sox for years and years to come. The way he acts on TV and he's waving to his mom and getting buckets of bubble gum pouring out on people, and the thing with Luis Robert in the outfield. Yep, you got the bobblehead that proves it. I mean, that's a real Eloy Jimenez line from an interview he did after a game. They didn't just pull that from nowhere. And he just has fallen off so hard. Like we said, the organizational stink has just even rubbed off on him. And it is truly sad. I honestly think every player that's in that locker room has to be out and they have to start fresh. There's just no way that this ever turns into a winning product with that type of culture. There's just no way.
So in the offseason, Andrew Benintendi became the biggest White Sox contract in the history of the team, right? You think the guy would be a leader, maybe come forward, say something to the media? Nothing. Apparently there was an in-locker room meeting after all this culture stuff, and apparently, according to various reports, Benintendi was the fire leader of it. True or not, how has this guy not talked to the media? It blows my mind a little bit because they got to have. I'm sure White Sox PR is in the ear of some of these guys saying, "You guys got to talk to the media today."
Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, Benintendi, his leadership ability has been a joke. He does make the most money in the history of any player in team history in terms of overall contract value. But then I think back to his days in Kansas City, New York, and Boston specifically, because that's where he had the most success. He was never that guy. You know, they had when they won the World Series in 2018, they had Mookie Betts and JD Martinez and Devers and Nunez and Mitch Moreland and Jackie Bradley Jr. and Chris Sale and David Price. But Andrew Benintendi was at the bottom of the totem pole when it came to that. And really, because he's paid so much, people think of him as one of the better players on the White Sox. But really, he's like the seventh best player on a World Series championship team. He's getting paid absolutely fairly. He's getting paid like an average to slightly above average outfielder. And that's exactly what he is. People think because it's the richest contract in White Sox history, he has to be the best player in White Sox history. No, all the best players in White Sox history were underpaid. And most of the current elite players on the team are underpaid. Luis Robert Jr. is arguably the most talented player. Well, besides, I would say Frank Thomas was the most talented hitter in team history. But, you know, everybody healthy for a full 162 for a 5-year span. Who you take it, Paul Konerko or Luis Robert Jr.? I personally would take Luis Robert Jr. It sucks to say because Paulie's a legend, but it's, you know.
Maybe.
Maybe. And a healthy and full 162 for 5 years. That's
not dogging it.
Yeah, that's asking a lot. And Paulie gave 100% effort every single day. But Andrew Benintendi is exactly what he's always been. People who thought because he's making all this money, he was going to be more. That's just not the case. He's the same player now that he was in Boston. And in Boston, he wasn't a leader. He didn't need to be. Here, he needs to be, but he isn't one. So expecting that of him, I'm really not all that surprised that we haven't heard from Benintendi much this season.
Yeah, if Jake Berger was here, we probably would have heard from him. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up, Vin. Did you hear that about how Rick Hahn didn't want to trade Berger, but Kenny Williams wanted him traded? That's nuts.
Too many cooks in the kitchen, Joe. Too many cooks in the kitchen. It's like if we were to do this podcast with 7 people, it just really wouldn't work all that well. Like you need there to be like continuity. And the White Sox did say in their note when they fired Hahn and Williams that they were going to hire one single decision maker. I think that line was important. I hope that's something that they stick to. But, as of right now, I have no reason to believe that whoever that single decision maker is going to be the right one. I would love, if I could pick anyone, it would be Theo, right? Like he's a legend. Boston doesn't win a World Series in 87 years or whatever it is. And then he comes to town. Yeah, he comes to Boston adopting the Billy Bean model, except on top of the Billy Bean model, they have the money to go pay Pedro Martinez and Curt Schilling, right? Like that's the difference between the A's and the Red Sox. Billy Bean would win a World Series in Boston too. He's a smart GM and he knows how to build the squad from the bottom up. But in Boston, he was allowed to supplement it. Theo was, and he did. And then they won 2 World Series with him. And then they won 2 more with the foundation in place that Theo left behind. Fast forward a little bit, he comes to the Cubs. The Cubs didn't even have a front office person answering the telephone when Theo first got there. And he's like, no. Oh, we don't have good equipment down in spring training? Oh, what do you mean it's hard to get it from Chicago to Arizona? We're the Chicago freaking Cubs. And they started building up this insane training facility in Arizona when they were down there for the Cactus League, and they had no problem hauling it back up to Chicago when they were done. And, they win the World Series just 4 short years later from when Theo got there. And guess what? The Cubs are good right now. Jed's doing a great job. The players are doing a great job. David Ross, he has his critics and he has his lovers, but the Cubs, for the most part right now, are built still on the foundation that Theo left behind. I know they went through a retool and he's not there anymore, but Jed Hoyer's doing all the same practices that Theo left behind. So there's a long lasting effect even after they're gone, some of these guys. So Theo's one of those guys. I do think it would be a little bit more for his third time around. He would probably want a minority owned stake in the team, but I don't know, man. It's one of those things. Like, it's almost like if they don't hire him, I'm not going to trust that it'll work. Like, it's weird. I hope I'm wrong, but the reports just seem so White Sox. Like, you're going to keep Grifol? What? You just fired Hahn and Williams.
They're not keeping Grifol. There's no way.
I hope not,
I would be stunned.
I would too, actually, but I also wouldn't. Joe, really? The White Sox doing something stupid would stun you?
Well, how do you bring in a new GM and say it's your team and then you have to stick with the old guy? That's just not.
The same guy that you don't think would do that forced Tony La Russa down his GM's throat. It's just the opposite.
Yeah, that's true.
I hope you're right, though. Please be right, dear baseball gods. Let Joe Mandel be correct. He's the wise one. He is the wise one.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that. Speaking of wise one, the Chicago White Sox fans are wise, Vin. I don't know if this is still happening, but is the anti-boycott happening today still?
I don't know. Is it today?
It was supposed to be today.
I have no idea. It's funny, though, because it's against the A's, who did the original boycott earlier this season. All I know is for tonight's game is that if the White Sox beat the A's are eliminated from postseason contention. They have 35
as if they were going to have a shot. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's just I saw a tweet like they're mathematically eliminated with their next loss are the A's.
Well, the Sox should be eliminated, but because their division sucks so bad, they're not.
Yeah, they probably won't be mathematically eliminated until the final 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah,
which is disgustingly poor looking for the division.
The
but
Central.
Yeah. The Twins. Don't sleep on the Twins in the playoffs. That's all I'll say this year. They haven't won a playoff game in 24 years. They've been swept in every series they've made it to. But the Yankees aren't going to make it this year. And I just have this odd feeling that, like, once you're in, anybody can win. I do believe that. Once you're in, anybody can win. The NLCS last year was the Phillies and the Padres, 2 wildcard teams. So...
See your boy De La Cruz with 6 RBI and a homer in the first game yesterday?
Hell yeah. I hope the Reds sneak in. I don't care whose spot they have to take. I don't care if they take the Cubs spot. I don't care if they're not going to take the Philly spot. I don't care if they take the Brewers spot. I'm not.
Bryce Harper's freaking crushing the ball right now, dude.
I know. He is. I think I'd rather the Marlins. I don't know. I want Berger and the Reds to be in, but I don't have a love for the Marlins. It's just Berger.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big love, though.
5 years of club control. Freaking stupid trade.
Yeah. And all the prospects that have come to the White Sox have kind of stunk, including Jake Eder, who's got arm talent. There's no doubt. And I think next year he could come in knowing he's in a fresh organization.
Ton of pressure on him, though.
Yeah, there is. And that's sad because it's not his fault.
Unnecessary pressure.
Yeah. And
because you can't make that deal without putting him in the rotation.
Yeah.
I don't think.
How do you pronounce Miami's GM's name? Kim Ng.
I think it's Ing.
Is it Ing?
I believe it's Ing. I'm not 100% sure, though.
I'm pretty sure Kim Ing said on the radio in Miami, and the story didn't blow up the way it should have, that it was Kenny Williams who traded Jake Berger to the Marlins. And then McGuffey kind of confirmed it a couple days ago, and I'm like, this is nasty, man. They had no communication. Hahn didn't want to trade Berger, but he was traded anyway. What is Hahn doing then anyway? What is he there for? And then the story from David Kaplan, I'm about to publish it on Southside Showdown in, probably within a half hour of this show ending. That's what I was working on right before we got in. David Kaplan said that Hahn wanted to resign a long time ago. And Jerry threatened him that if you resign with all those years left on your contract, I'm not giving you permission to speak to any other teams, because that's how contracts work with GMs. And I'm like, what a complete doofus. You shoved Tony La Russa down his throat. You didn't allow him to expand the roster by spending extra money on anything other than relievers. And then you're going to tell him he can't go to another team when the time is clearly right. He doesn't want Tony La Russa as the manager. And lo and behold, I hate when people say Tony La Russa came in and, got the most out of this 2021 team. What? They stunk, kind of. They were under 500 against the non-division. Tony La Russa sucked in 2021 just as much as he sucked in 2022.
Oh, big facts, Vin. You can't talk about this team without stinking it up lately. It's a giant circus act, I would say.
I know. And you nailed it right when you first came in. When I first heard the news, I was so excited. I was like, let's go. They fired Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams. I didn't even think they'd hire one of them, let alone both of them.
There's Rick and Kenny on our screen right now.
Oh, there you go. Where's Jerry? Oh, Jerry's in the back playing with a balloon.
He's the ringmaster.
Yeah. I mean, just
for those of you who aren't in on the joke that are listening to the podcast, there was some circus clowns on the screen.
Yeah. Which I personally hope that Hahn goes to another team that doesn't force Tony La Russa down his throat and gives him money to spend and allows him to finish off the rebuild that he started. Because and I'm not a Hahn guy at all. He stunk towards the end. But the rebuild did start off on a good foot. Nobody questioned it.
Yeah.
They got all these great prospects for Sale and Quintana and Eaton. The Todd Frazier trade was a bust. Blake Rutherford never became anything. But, I mean, for the most part, the prospects were good. They had a top 3 farm system, and they all started to come up and win together in 2020 and 2021. And then it just all went to shit once Jerry Reinsdorf stuck his hand in the cookie jar.
Vin, can we talk about one elephant in the room that I have not even talked about with anybody yet? And that's the fact that they made this decision after the trade deadline. And they let them make these moves. What's the thought process there? Why do you let them make those moves then?
That's just how you know it's a broken organization, Joe. Like,
Fair.
You let him handle the trade deadline with his future vision in mind of competing next season, and then you fire him 3 weeks later. If you would have told me that they were going to fire Rick Hahn at the end of August after letting him do the trade deadline, like they should have just fired him in mid-July or fired him in April after the 10-game losing streak. Like that is just bad business. It just goes to show that nobody there knows what they're doing anymore. And I can't believe the trade deadline, because a good GM, in my opinion, would have kept Berger. They would have kept... That's pretty much the only one they traded that they would have kept, in my opinion. I didn't hate trading Giolito, Lynn, whatever, Graveman. But you have to have a plan in mind. And the fact that they didn't trade Clevenger. How do you not trade Bummer? Like, there are so many pieces that they could have traded away for nothing, even just to let other guys come up and, get their shot or have a vision in mind or something. Tell me you're going to succeed next year and then try. When Hahn told me they were trying to win next year after trading Giolito and Lynn and Reynaldo Lopez and Joe Kelly and Graveman, how can you look me in the eye and tell me you're trying to win next year after making those moves? You just look like an idiot, because you couldn't even win when those guys were here.
Yeah, it's disgusting, Vin. I'm just happy those clowns are gone, and hopefully they don't make a clown decision after they're gone.
Yeah, well, I'm not really counting on it, but at the same time, I don't know. I just want the White Sox to be good. I'm tired of White Sox Twitter has become a cesspool. There's no doubt it's become a cesspool. Everybody's mean to each other. I contributed some money to the Sell the Team billboard, and then the guy who does it shits on me on Twitter. If the one person, if one person could get me to like Nick Madrigal, it'd be the guy who wrote this article. Like, screw you, dude. I'm never supporting your content ever again. You could lick my ass.
I did not know that.
I don't get. And then he didn't respond when I was like calling him out. Like, dude, what did I do to you? I'm not unfriendly with any White Sox fans on Twitter. There are people who are a-holes, like who. I don't have to get into detail on this one specific corner of White Sox Twitter. But like outside of those guys, I have no beef with anybody. I didn't do anything to anybody. I try to be friendly with everyone. If you disagree with a baseball take of mine, that's fine. But you don't have to hate me. I don't hate you. I think your take is clownish too, but I don't hate you. In fact, I support your content. If you're trying to get in the content game and put your name out there and make yourself known and build this into something, good for you. Just because I disagree that you think somebody might deserve to stay, or you might like Tony La Russa, like, that's fine. Tony La Russa is the greatest manager who ever lived. I didn't think he was that good with the White Sox. That doesn't mean, you have that other idiot on Twitter who likes to send the same GIF over and over again. I'm not going to say any names.
There's a few of those guys.
I'm not going to say any names, but it has to do with the nationality that I am. That kid's just all over the place. I'm like, dude, you like Tony La Russa? I don't. That means I don't know anything about baseball? Like, what are you talking about? He was horrible with the White Sox. That's my opinion. But whatever. Just be nicer to people, White Sox Twitter. There's no reason to not be nice.
Did you see the photo of Tony La Russa from last week?
Yeah, and you know what that was, Joe? That's Tony La Russa not dyeing his hair. He looked like that last year. He just doesn't dye his hair anymore. So, like, that guy was managing your team. That feeble, and I'm not ripping on Tony La Russa. I wish him all the health in the world. I hope he lives for another 100 years. That was the guy managing the team last year. He just doesn't dye his hair anymore because he doesn't need to try and fool people into thinking he's a competent manager anymore. He's not a competent manager. He wasn't last year. The game has passed him by. And I feel bad because he clearly isn't in good health. He's an older man now. But no, can't be involved in baseball anymore.
I have it here. I'm pulling it up, actually, just so our viewers can see it.
Yeah, he did. It was an interview on TV with the St. Louis Cardinals. He was an all-time great manager with them. I would say, that's probably the team he had the most success with, the St. Louis Cardinals. And he doesn't dye his hair anymore. So he looks even older than he did last year. So, I mean, people don't think that he grayed that much in 1 year, do they? I think there are people that probably think that. But
there's
let
people
me tell
that
you
think
something.
that for sure.
when you're 78 years old, that's what your hair looks like unless you dye it. So, I'm already getting gray hair. I would say 1/8 of all my hair is gray, and I'm 28 years old. So when I'm 78, I promise you that's what my hair is going to look like unless I dye it, as he did last year and the year before.
Well, and it was very evident that he dyed it too. His hair, I'm like, my hair is not even that brown, man, or whatever it was last year.
Yeah. Tony La Russa made like our 50 and 60-year-old dad's hair look old. My dad's bald, but he don't have hair. I'm probably not going to have hair. I mean, maybe. My dad was completely bald by my age.
Well, look at that.
I'm sure I'll lose it eventually. Yeah, I won that battle, but I don't think I'm going to win the war. I've heard that before. That's the mom's side. The mom's father.
Well, I just figured if your dad's got no hair and your mom's got hair, so just by default. But yes, you are technically correct as well for the genetics side.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. Just don't be mean to each other on Twitter, dude. It's the freaking White Sox. We all want them to win. We might disagree on how we think they're going to get there, but once they get there, we're all going to be happy. Right? Yeah. Like there were Red Sox fans that didn't want them to sign JD Martinez in 2018. And there are people that did. Well, okay, you can argue about it all offseason long. Do you really have to hate each other for it? Because guess what? The Red Sox did sign JD Martinez. He had 30 bombs from them, came third in MVP voting that year, and they won the World Series. That's all we all want at the end of the day.
I think it worked out.
Yeah.
So we want to switch gears and talk about the other big story in baseball, Vin?
Yeah, we can wrap up the show by talking about something that sucks. Joe, I was melancholy last night, and I woke up, and it was the first thing I thought about, honestly. It's like I'm so sad about the news. Of course, if you don't know, Shohei Ohtani of the Los Angeles Angels has torn his UCL in his elbow. And for those of you who don't know, the UCL is the ligament in the elbow that routinely is given Tommy John surgery. So Shohei Ohtani, who had Tommy John once before in 2018, is going to not pitch the rest of the season, and they're going to see whether or not they need the Tommy John. But I believe he's probably going to end up having Tommy John surgery right when the season is over. And this is bad news, right? Ohtani, first of all, was just about to enter the third act of the greatest season ever. He's got a 3.14 ERA, I think, and 44 home runs. That just doesn't happen. A guy who could pitch and hit at a high level, especially. Yeah. And now, not only is his free agency that he's about to hit probably going to take a hit, because nobody's going to give a one-way player.
Hit may be the understatement of the century, Vin.
Like hundreds of millions of dollars.
I think this will cost him $200 million at least.
Yes.
On that deal.
I agree. And
because he was expected to get around 550, right?
Absolutely. I've always said the knee is my least favorite part of the human body. The elbow is so close in second place. Like those two ligaments suck. If you hurt them, you're done. And because nobody's going to pay a hitter $550 for a mega deal.
No, not a hitter only.
No, absolutely. Mike Trout didn't make that much. Couldn't have come at a
worse time.
Judge didn't make that much, and Judge is a better hitter than Ohtani. Barely, but he is. It's sad, Joe. I almost cried last night. I'm not even kidding. I literally almost teared up. Like, he is going to miss out on $200 million extra dollars because of it, and his future as a two-way player is now in jeopardy. When he comes, if he has Tommy John, is he going to come back and pitch as well? It's not.
He won't pitch next year.
No, he won't pitch next year. He'll hit. He'll probably be their DH because he was their DH in 2020, and he was recovering from Tommy John, but he couldn't play a position. But I really hope Ohtani gets to do both for at least 1 or 2 more years after Tommy John. But he will end his career as just a DH for sure. The fact that we got 4 solid seasons of Ohtani as a pitcher and a hitter is special. I don't think it's ever going to happen again. I honestly think I'll live out my life and pass away before that ever happens again. But I mean, it's really sad. I mean, that is a generational athlete, not even baseball player, athlete. Like, imagine if every 5 games Connor McDavid suited up and played goalie, or
Yeah.
if Justin Fields also played corner. That's what the comparison is like to me, and we're gonna miss watching him pitch. It really sucks. It's bad news.
And it was a doubleheader. First game this happened, and then he
Yep.
plays in the second game and hits a home run. It's
Yeah.
like,
He's unreal.
come on.
He's unreal.
unbelievable.
And he's a sweetie too. Did you see the interaction with him and De La Cruz on the Bates pass? Oh, De La Cruz, who's elite, just a phenomenon, touches him on the arm to make sure he's real. He's like, "Are you real?" He touches him, and then Ohtani's making fun of the way he swung at his big hit. Oh, just a real, genuine human being. I love that man, Ohtani.
But this we brought up the losing $200 million off the contract. Is it in a strange way the mishandling of Ohtani by the Angels and the mishandling of Mike Trout, who also ended up on the IL today, again,
a day after coming back,
correct? Is it possible that the mishandling of Ohtani sets him up to be more likely to return to the Angels?
I would say the chance of him staying with the Angels has increased, yes. Because
it's really messed up.
Now the New York Mets, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, the Chicago Cubs, the Seattle Mariners. I'm naming all the teams I think that have a chance at Ohtani. Los Angeles Dodgers. You're going to think I'm crazy. Atlanta Braves. Why wouldn't they throw the bank at him? And it wouldn't shock me if the Miami Marlins threw the bank at him. I think the Texas Rangers would, had they not put a lot of money in DeGrom, Eovaldi, all those guys. But all those teams, now Scherzer, they probably all take a step back and evaluate things a little further. Like, yeah, you're getting this insane two-way player that can pitch at a high level. He's probably a top 5 pitcher, and I think he's the second best hitter in baseball. But he does both of them, so that makes him the overall best player ever, not even just active. Who would you take in their prime, Babe Ruth or Ohtani? Barry Bonds.
It's hard you can't even compare.
Yeah, you can't. It's like if you took Chris Sale in his prime and Frank Thomas in his prime and put them in one player.
And it's wild because the parallels now between Babe Ruth and Ohtani are even stronger now, because Babe Ruth did the same thing. He pitched so long, and then his arm wasn't what it used to be. I don't know if there was an injury with Babe Ruth or not. I don't want to claim that there was, but he did eventually hang it up, and then he just started hitting dingers,
Yeah, it was the switch to the New York Yankees, if I recall my baseball history correctly. The Red Sox, he was just strictly a pitcher, but in those days you pitched 1 every 3 days. So he was able to hit a lot, and he hit dingers 1 every 3 days as a pitcher. And then when he went to the Yankees, he was really only a true two-way player with the Yankees for 2 years. And then he switched to being a right fielder / monster home run hitter. There was no DH at the time, even in the American League. So, yeah, Babe Ruth was also a fat, womanizing asshole. So Ohtani's not that.
He's definitely not. But I do think we can all agree that we're going to look back, and you and I are old men, Vin, and we're going to say that the Angels robbed the world of one of the most electric baseball players, because I think we all know he probably won't be the same. He very well could be. He's a freak of nature. He might come back and be exactly the same. But this is the second time he's getting Tommy John. The first time, it was the same UCL last time. So this is the second time it's being repaired. I don't know. You don't know that he comes back the same. But we do know that the Angels, they should have traded him at this point now. Obviously, it looks that way. And now they're going to let him walk, unless for some reason he comes back.
Yeah, so I do think he'll hit 50 home runs this season. He needs 6 more. I think he has an outside chance at breaking the American League record set by Judge last year. If he focuses primarily on hitting now, then I think he could have a chance to do that even more.
But should they shut him down, Vin?
See, yeah, that's a good conversation. I think it's possible they should shut him down. But at the same time, he's a free agent. They don't know if he's coming back. Why would they shut him down? Why would they end their ticket revenue of every single game he pitches? Their ratings are through the roof because every household in Japan watches the Shohei Ohtani starts. And then, or the at-bats, whatever, they tune in for Ohtani. And they sell more Ohtani merch than any other player in the league because of the international success. If he had 5 years left on his deal, then yeah, I absolutely would see the Angels doing something like that. But because of the current contract situation, what do they have to lose? They don't care.
The Angels screwed over Ohtani so bad.
They did. They screwed over themselves and Ohtani so bad. So bad. I'd rather be a White Sox fan than an Angels fan. Yeah. Absolutely. And they have cool merch, too. I have an Ohtani shirt, and I have a couple Angels hats. They're a sick team. They're just assholes. Basically from the top to bottom. So.
Yeah, it sucks. I knew for sure today you're going to want to talk about this, so that's why I'm like, can we shit on the Angels?
Yeah, no, I'm always down to shit on the Angels and praise Ohtani. He's probably right there for my favorite player ever. I've thoroughly enjoyed these last handful of years. There was a point where Crosstown Crosstalk was an Ohtani show. It wasn't a baseball show. It was an Ohtani show. Yeah, I always defend him. Our pal Frank Mueller used to say that there's no way he does both for a long time. And boy, was he wrong. He said this in like 2018. There's no way he pitches and hits in the major leagues. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. I'm like, dude, the frickin' dude is a beast. I didn't think he'd get to this level where he's the second best hitter and top 5 pitcher. But I don't know. I think it's a big deal. We got some breaking news here in the sports world. The first thing we'll touch on, I got this notification as well. I didn't see the second thing you put, but that sucks. The first thing is Steven Strasburg has retired from Major League Baseball. Steven Strasburg coming up while we're talking about Ohtani is very interesting because Strasburg dealt with some early career arm injuries as well. I remember when he was first drafted, it was right around like when I was in my middle high school years, and I bought a Trout jersey before he played a single game, and I had the Strasburg Harper fever as well. I was like all in on those 3 players. Like, and 2 of them were on. I thought I would have bet my life the Angels would play the Nationals in the World Series at some point. The Nationals did end up getting one, not with Harper, but with Strasburg for sure. And the dude was just a beast. And they did shut him down. They shut him down twice. They were in first place and they shut him down a couple times, knowing what he'd become. And it ended up working out in their favor because they did win the World Series. But, you know, that's what the difference between that and Ohtani is, the fact that he had years left on his deal and you knew he'd be a Nat for a long time. His career is clearly ending early because of injuries and whatnot. He'd still firmly be in the league right now, like Scherzer and Verlander.
Talent, man.
Yeah, Scherzer and Verlander. Exactly. Those guys are still in the league, all the old guys. Strasburg is younger than them, so it's clearly an injury-related thing that he's retired, but it sucks. I'm happy the Nationals did get that World Series. I mean, Juan Soto was incredible that year. They had Anthony Rendon. I mean, it was just a dominating team. That's where our buddy Adam Eaton ended up. Yeah. I believe that's Kurt Suzuki as the catcher, too. Just an unreal team they were with Strasburg, and I wish him well in retirement. The other news that sucks just as bad, if not more, wide receiver Jerry Jeudy carted off with a hamstring injury from the Denver Broncos. What's that all about?
Yeah, so this just broke a little while ago. I guess during practice, they had to take him off in a cart. He held his right leg just above the knee while riding on the cart. He said he couldn't put any weight on it, and they helped him in the locker room. So now his availability for the regular season start here on September 10th is obviously in jeopardy, Vin. Obviously, new look team, Sean Payton, the coach there. And, of course, Russell Wilson still the quarterback. Jeudy was, arguably one of Wilson's favorite targets. So This could be a really big loss for them if it's as bad as it seems. If he can't put any weight on it, it feels a lot like the whole Madrigal torn hamstring stuff. So I know I'm speculating, but I hope that's not the case.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case either. I actually planned on trying to make him a fantasy steal in the middle rounds because I do think the Broncos are going to be improved. They're certainly not going to pass up the Chiefs or the Chargers in their division, but I don't know. Maybe the Raiders will end up being better than them now too. Certainly possible.
Yeah, and this is another reason I'll use the platform, Vin, on your show. As a fantasy commissioner, you cannot have your draft before the end of the preseason. It's just
can't do it.
Something you should not do, because I know a lot of people that had drafts yesterday, had drafts last week. I guarantee you Judy was taken probably, like you said, in the 6th, 7th round, and people might have to stick with him on the IL whatever they call it now in football. It's been called so many different things. What is it? Injured reserve? IR?
I think it's injured reserve in football.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, that really does suck. But the first quote, when someone asked me if I want to be, if I want to be in their fantasy league, the first question is always, when's your draft? Oh, it's August 20th. No, thank you. No, thanks.
Yeah.
It has to be the weekend of Labor Day is basically the only weekend it's truly acceptable.
It's funny you bring that up, Vin. We can use this also to promote that.
On Labor
Day, we will be having the Barroom Network Fantasy Draft being streamed live here on this network, taking the place of South Burb Sitman. There will be no South Burb Sitman that night. So join us for some fun. We'll talk some football and just have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have 3 drafts that day. So
nice.
I have a family one. I have 2 family ones, one on Katie's side, one on my side, and then Barroom Network one at night. And I go to a Labor Day parade in the morning, and then from that moment on, I'm doing fantasy drafts all day. So a big football day for me.
For the love of the game, baby.
It's true. It's fun. I'm reading a post that just popped up on my phone. Buster Olney wrote an article for ESPN Plus about how Ohtani might not be a $500 million man anymore, and it really makes me want to cry.
It's true. It's
I've
really
never
sad.
I've never rooted for someone to get that much money. For the most part, I don't care if people get that much money. Like, that's a lot of money. Like $100 million is a lot of money. But I wanted it for Ohtani so bad. It sucks. My whole week is ruined.
The Angels did him so dirty, and I can't dislike them enough.
Absolutely. I agree. All right, Joseph. This has been a nice little hour-long episode of Crosstown. I thought it was going to be 20 minutes. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we head on out of here?
I don't think so, man. I got the first Thursday night football of the season on Amazon tonight. It's preseason, but hey, it's something to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be on my TV. There's no doubt about it. The White Sox are off. It might be on my TV even if the White Sox were on. The White Sox would probably be relegated to either the little TV or the laptop if they were on, but they're not. So that'll be on. I hope everybody enjoys it. Hockey's coming up. Bar Down's going to get hot as well. So, and then the next time you see me and Joe on the airwaves of the Barroom Network, unless somebody big dies, will be Monday night. Will be Monday night the South Burb Zitman. So make sure you tune into that. I hope everybody enjoyed the program.
You're doing a show tonight, aren't you? Sorry, not to cut you off.
I'm not. I couldn't make it tonight.
Okay.
I talked with those guys, Bears Country Podcast. I love them very much. I am going to get back on with them relatively soon, though. I'm in touch with the guys over there. So we're going to come up with another Thursday that I can go on and do the full 2.5, 3 hours or whatever. So it would have been a very short show today if I were to. I'm going to give these guys. I want to give them the time of day that they deserve. So in a couple weeks, I'll be on for sure.
Hell yeah, man. Love it.
Yeah. Make sure you go check those guys out. Bear Country Podcast. Type it in on YouTube. Foster and the dudes. They are sick. I love it. So for everybody who tuned in the chat, for everybody watching, listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, everything, you could get a podcast. Thank you so much. We will see you later on Monday night, South Burb Sitman, the rest of the great shows here at the Barroom Network. As always, thank you for listening.
Another happy landing.